Welcome to the Resolution Room, a space for reflection and meaningful dialogue. I'm Dr. Nishay Lowe. My work sits at the intersection of leadership, communication, and conflict transformation, helping people see challenge as a teacher, not a threat. Each episode invites you to look closer, think deeper, and lead with greater intention. Because resolution isn't the absence of difficulty, it's learning to move through it on purpose. Let's get into it. Today's episode is about what happens when leadership costs more than we admit. Behind every policy and process is emotional labor, often invisible, often unspoken, that can make or break an organization. When leaders ignore it, cultures crack. But when they face it with honesty and purpose, transformation becomes possible. Our guest has lived both sides, rebuilding himself through personal adversity and guiding organizations out of toxic cycles into healthier, more resilient cultures. In this conversation, we're going to explore the real toll leadership takes, what it looks like to protect your humanity while driving change, and how to turn emotional weight into clarity and performance. Because the truth is, culture doesn't just shift because of strategy. It shifts because of people. And it starts with leaders willing to be honest about what it really takes. All right, Alfredo, can you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Yes, sure. Hi, Nashay. Hi, everybody listening. My name is Alfredo Borodowski. I am an expert on positive psychology for peak performance. I love helping people get into where they want to go. I had a life with a lot of ups and downs, and I found that positive psychology has been key in flourishing. It's the science of flourishing. We know today scientifically how to flourish. We know the principles, we have the studies, we have the tool, the methodology. But what I found as a consultant is that all that knowledge is not yet well known in companies. It's an unexplored opportunity. And what I do is to bring all that knowledge and tools to really give the chance to companies to flourish and achieve their dreams.
Amazing. Can you tell me first the name of your consultancy and just a little more background into how you got started in that?
You know, it's very interesting. I work the way I love to design my life, and this has been always my way of doing things, is to do multiple things at the same time. Okay. I am one of these people who has a book in the kitchen, a book in the bathroom, a book in the living room, and I read a different book and a different chapter as I move from place to place. The people ask me, which book are you reading? My answer is, where? Okay. And that's the way I design my work. Nashay, I am from Argentina, originally from Buenos Aires. I've been in the States for 30 years. But I would say half of my work with Latin America. I am the senior organizational consultant at a company in Chile, where I do much of my work. I'm going now in November to teach a workshop on positive psychology to 8 CEOs of companies. Then we are going to gather in the Chilean mountains. They're bringing me all the way from the States to Chile for a intimate gathering. There are 8 of them. They want to learn the latest in positive psychology. I also work for a software company in Argentina, where I am from. They specialize in software, but they want somebody who knows about the impact of AI in the psychology, resilience, and motivation companies. Then they offer me as part of their package.
Interesting.
And I'm going before Chile and going to stop in Argentina. And here in the States, you know, I work for myself and people find me on my website and references. And then I have, travel around and I love it.
Amazing. I'm curious, are there any maybe similarities or key differences you notice from doing this type of work in South America versus the United States?
Oh my God, each country Chileans are very polite. Okay, then when you go to a workshop, there is a lot of warm up to be done. And they're so polite that you have to second guess a little bit what they're trying to say. because even when they are upset, they're very nice. Okay, then it takes me somewhere to peel the layers to get to the Argentinians. The opposite, they're very direct, to the point. Okay, and no anesthesia, and we are late. Okay, then I know that I had to schedule the team to begin a certain point. It's going to begin at least half an hour later. And the States is, very efficient. There, we like to follow corporate rules. In Argentina, in Chile, when I get to a deal, I talk with one person and usually a second person. Here in the States, it's a process of talking to 10 different people
Right.
until it is done.
Right.
And yes, the nicest people, and the humility is a quality I see a lot there. Then,
Wow.
then yes, and that's what I love about it. There are different challenges and styles and people, and you never get bored.
I can imagine. So, in your experience, what's the hidden emotional toll leadership takes that most leaders don't talk about?
Look, we are now at a special juncture. AI has changed the rules of the game. AI is bringing a higher degree, much higher than ever, of uncertainty and anxiety. If the problem 5 years ago was motivation, absenteeism, those are still always part of the game, but now there are other challenges that enter the picture, anxiety and uncertainty. You know, Other technologies like the printing press and the steam engine and electricity, they all presented challenges. But the challenges were different, were challenges of replacing our action. The technology was going to do things better than we do. This is different AI. AI is not about replacing what we do, it's about replacing who we are.
Mm.
AI can write poetry. AI can write music. We are in the frontiers of creating some synergy of humans with chips on the brain or bionic robots imitating what we do. Then this is a new different ballgame. It's not about machines and technology taking our actions. It's about turning us into obsolete. And I think that I don't see this discussion taking place about the real impact and fear behind technology. By the way, I am pro AI. Don't get me wrong. I think it's a blessing. But if companies don't make the adjustment at the human dimension, they're going to pay a high price. Now it's happening is anxiety, uncertainty, and depression. And I think that leaders are jumping into the technological wagon because it's necessary to keep to be on top, but they are not including in the equation the human cost.
And so, focusing again more on that human centeredness part of the organization, when you walk into an institution or a company, how do you quickly sense whether people feel truly heard or just managed?
You know, I've been doing this for many, many years. Then I have a sixth sense. I try not to let it tell me much because I always give the benefit of listening. But I just look about, one of the things that tell me a lot about the company is how they assess,
Hmm.
how they assess the work of others. And we know today from positive psychology, for example, through the work of Barbara Fredrickson and Losada, who are the two top people in the world on positivity. And we know that for each negative emotion, let's say envy, disappointment, any negative emotion, you need three positive to equate. Then the negative is much more powerful than the positive. Then we know today from evaluations and assessments that the manager must begin with three positive in order to then address the negative. Otherwise, they're going to demolish the other person. First of all, there is always something positive to say, even when you want to get to the negative. Okay, if you think that this is all negative, then you already gave up and there is not much to assess.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but if assessing is a learning opportunity, then it begins with 3 positive to 1 negative. Then we know today the measurements, we know the techniques. Then one of the things I do when I get to company and I talk with managers and leaders is how do you assess? And the assessment usually comes through strength theory. People ask me, what do you do, Alfredo, at companies? I am an optometrist. There are 24 strengths of positive psychology, 24 that are universal, that are found at every culture through time. And Nashe, if you know your top 5 strengths of positive psychology, your capacity to flourish goes up 9 times. By knowing it, if you apply your top 5, 18 times. And 7 out of 10 people do not know their top strengths. Then there is a strength blindness. Then likely if I walk into a corporation and I see 10 people, likely 7 of them are working below their capacity just by not knowing the strengths. Then the first thing I do when I go to a company is a workshop on strengths. That's the first thing I do. And I make sure that every person has a top strengths and we have a team strengths assessment. And we work at the workshop immediately on an actual challenge they have and apply their strengths, and things change radically in just 2 hours.
Wow. Impressive. And so I guess then what signs tell you that a culture is starting to crack under the weight of unspoken tension?
Well, look, it's very interesting that we have good metrics for that. Companies call me when the teams are underperforming or there is toxicity, absenteeism. They feel it because they have the metrics, things are not going well. The problem is that when they call me, they want solutions to the process and not to the culture. They want me to fix things.
Yes.
Okay. And I had to explain that the solution is moving from a culture of fixing to a culture of nourishing. Okay. Then they want solutions which are not connecting to the basic, which is a cultural short circuit, which has to do with lack of strength application. It has to do with what we call today, which we have discovered, this is new, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, what is called psychological capital. Psychological capital is 4 things that we know today are decisive in the performance of an organization. And again, we know human capital, we know sociological capital. This is a new one. It's called psychological capital. And psychological capital is made out of 4 things: self-efficacy or confidence, optimism, hope, and resilience. And we know that if you focus on those 4 and you develop them, the team performance is going to go through the roof and it's going to be resilient to all the things I've been talking to you. But I go to a company and they ask me, what the solution? We have to work on hope and optimism, resilience, and self. And they look at me and say, those are soft skills. You know how we got soft skills, by the way? Do you know the origin of that?
Mm-mm.
Terrible, term. It came about on the 1970s first on military manuals. Then the military manuals distinguish between hard skills, who were shooting a gun, driving a tank, running fast, and soft skills that had to do with the emotional.
Right.
And then what happened? It moved from the trenches to the corporations. And language is important. And once we began calling the leadership aspects and the emotional aspects and the cultural aspects soft skills and the other the hard skills, then we put them on the background and we made them soft. When we know today that they are the hardest ones, they're the most important ones. You can have all the technology you want. You have the bad culture, is going to be for none. Then that's where the journey begins, with strength clarification, with psychological capital, and then technology is going to come to reinforce that.
And then, so shifting a little bit, coming into the position that you are now with your consulting and your coaching, You've been pretty open about overcoming your own adversities in your own personal life. We all have those moments. So, how has that impacted the way that you again lead and coach based on how you've managed those personal struggles?
Then I'm not going to tell the full story, but I was a rabbi for 30 years of one of the most prestigious congregations in the country, and a congregant of mine gave me a shield, a replica of his shield, friends and family shields, which, by the way, Nashe, should be illegal. Why a policeman is giving a replica of his shield to a friend and family if not to get away with things? We are all equal under the law unless you have a policeman in the family. Then he gave me that friends and family shield, and I was manic and was wrongly medicated with the antidepressant. And then I began patrolling the streets of New York, the highways, impersonating a police officer. I was arrested. The press had a circus out of me, a prestigious rabbi from Westchester. They called me the road rage rabbi. I went viral from pages of newspapers from Ireland to Japan.
Wow.
I was fired, hospitalized, diagnosed bipolar, and I went to deep depression for 8 months. Until one day I felt an energy pushing me out of the couch. I went upstairs to my room and I found something on my desk, which I had no clue who put it there. It was a yellow folder. I opened it and I found the top 5 strengths of positive psychology on a test I had taken a few months earlier. And I saw my top 5 strengths: creativity, love of learning, curiosity, perseverance, and bravery. And something turned on inside of me. Alfredo, you forgot who you are. And a month later, I was back to school to become a social worker. And with depression and with court cases, I did so great. And then I said I had to go around the world teaching the power of the strengths of positive psychology. Look what they've done they saved my life. And 7 out of 10 people do not know them. That should not continue.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So, for others, when someone's leading in a toxic environment, that could be personal or professional, how can they protect their mental health without disengaging from the work?
You have to have a plan. Then my plan is the usual plan, which is sleep enough hours, eat well, go to therapy every week, go to your psychiatrist, take your medication religiously. I take it every day, every night at 8:30. Doesn't matter that I am in the last minute of a Netflix movie. It's 8:30. I stop and take my medication, and I go to the gym every day except for Sundays. And for me, that has been my rituals that I follow. And for the last 10 years, I had no incident whatsoever. It's like I don't have anything. I've been blessed. Clearly, it's not the case of everybody. But for me, it's like, and try to have a work that matches your strengths, have alignment
Mm-hmm.
if you can. I understand that this is difficult, especially today. To have a job is in itself a blessing. But if you can try to match strengths to job to have an alignment. And that's for me, I took risks. I work for myself. I don't get a monthly paycheck, but the reward for me is the freedom to be myself and to take care of myself.
And so, what to you is the difference between bouncing back from a setback or a challenge and actually transforming through it?
Yes. Resilience in the true term is not bouncing back, but bouncing beyond where you were first. That's the difference between resilience and survival.
Love it.
Okay. Then every process of bouncing back higher has to be a learning process. What we know today is interesting. I'm writing a book, I'm almost finishing. It's called The Human Upgrade, the new resilient leadership for peak performance on the AI revolution. And I am very happy, many of your listeners may know about John Maxwell.
Mhm.
This is going to be published under the Maxwell self-published label. Then it's going to have the Maxwell label. I have a chapter on resilience and on teams, which is actually what I was reviewing today. And the number one, we know today that this study, you have two teams, one team with superstars and one team with average people. I don't like to call them this way because I think that everybody's a superstar, but let's say in their own way. But let's say and the team with the average people outperforms the one with the superstars. And in these scientific studies, what was the difference? The difference was the capacity to learn.
Okay.
The team with the highest degree of learning outperforms any other team considered to be with geniuses and bright people.
Interesting. And this was, you said, that's the sports team.
No. These were corporate teams.
Oh, corporate teams. Corporate teams. Got it.
It also sport teams, any team.
Any team.
Actually, this is similar study done for a hockey team. Then the key to resilience is learning. And don't think that this is so understood, because when leaders go to a team, usually their take is we are here to find a solution.
Right.
To achieve an objective, not to learn. They call it today, we call it on the science of team dynamics mastery. Okay, what you're looking is for mastery. Mastery understood as the capacity to learn. It's counterintuitive because you say that the team should learn. It sounds like the team doesn't know and cannot achieve. But it's the opposite. A team that learns, tries more, experiments more, have more tolerance for failure, and achieves more.
Tolerance for failure. I like that.
Absolutely. Every failure is an opportunity. And then that's something I work with managers. They need to convey to the team that we are here to learn and explain what learning is. Not because it's nice, Nashe, because we know from science that they will outperform other teams. I am about results. Companies don't bring me to be nice, although I am nice. They bring me to get results. Then what I tell them is that to be nice today is to get results.
So building on the work you're doing with the book and like the practical tools for sustainable value-based success. So you've distilled your work into the formula positivity plus purpose equals peak performance. How did you develop this?
I actually stretch the formula.
Okay.
But at all P's, okay, is positivity plus psychological capital plus purpose equal peak performance.
Okay.
And I see it working everywhere I go. The positivity is strengths, positive strengths. Then you begin with strengths, people owning the strengths and making sure, they invite me to podcast and usually ask me, what do you think about vulnerability? Now it's in fashion, vulnerable. That's by Rene Brown, who is the expert on, okay? No vulnerability, okay? Not for me. Look, we are already vulnerable. Okay, we are suffering from uncertainty, depression, and anxiety. I don't need people to be vulnerable. And I don't care how you define it and redefine it. Okay, if I look at the dictionary, vulnerable means that you are fragile and breaking. What we need now is strength, but character strengths, things that are connected to who you are, authentic, motivated, character strengths, which is what I do first. I want people to be strong, not vulnerable. If you're going to bring me for vulnerability, I know your guy. If you want a strong team of character that has strong character, humility, purpose, love of learning, leadership, spirituality, gratitude, honesty, humor as main components of what make a healthy culture, bring me. Then we do first character strengths. Then we do psychological capital. Then we focus on the 4 of efficacy or confidence, hope, which is the art of possibilities, optimism, which is the art of telling the story to yourself to convince yourself that you can, and resilience, which is to bounce back above where you were. Then we go to purpose, which is the art of giving the best of yourself for the benefit of others. Then we use an instrument called the purpose factor, which is the newest instrument on mapping purpose. It's fantastic. And I tell you, I am one of the founding consultants. I am of the first 100 people licensed of this instrument. And when you put all that process together, peak performance just naturally evolves.
Mm-hmm. I find your perspective on vulnerability to be very interesting because when you were explaining earlier the process of building that character strength, the idea of sort of letting go of the ego to be willing to learn and such, to me, is being vulnerable to get to the character strength.
No, for me, I don't have time. Okay, and companies don't have time. People are operating 9 times below what they can because they are ignorant of the strengths. And the strengths already, they have them. They have them already. They don't need. They have them. What happens is that they're unconscious, and they need to bring to intentionality. Okay, the strengths are there. We got to bring them to the surface, be strong, and go forward. But no, it's not power. It's not strength. It's character strengths.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we begin. Okay, that's my approach. I bring teams who are demoralized, teams who are underperforming, teams that are second guessing, who have uncertainty and anxiety. And the first thing we do is to infuse them with character strengths to move them forward with confidence.
Mm-hmm. So then what's one change a leader could make today that would have the biggest ripple effect on their team culture?
That's a tough question. First of all, they had to bring me to the company. This is like
That's the first step, right?
This is the easiest way to do. First of all, they need to know their strengths. And with your permission, I can tell everybody how. Because I'm not going to be talking about strengths and me going through the world, being an optometrist and teaching people to open their eyes without telling how they can get it. Would be for me cruel. Then everybody should now take your phone, go to your texting, and text the word positive to 33777. Easy, yes? Positive 33777. I will send you text me positive to that number, a chart, a nice chart with the 24 strengths of positive psychology. Then you have them all. And 3 simple questions by which you can determine your top 5. Then I will give you 3 easy exercises to move yourself to 18 times flourishing. I also got there a calendar, Nashe, for people who want to, no strings attached, to have a half an hour, just talk more about it. But I want to make sure that everybody listening comes out of this dialogue we're having knowing the 5 top strengths. That's the first thing the leader has to do, to begin to lead from the 5 strengths. Then they will want everybody to know them. After they see what they do in themselves, they will understand that that's a key today to move forward.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So when the mission feels a little heavy and, dynamics are kind of turbulent, what's the first step for finding clarity again?
Okay, purpose clarification. Purpose and clarity and synonyms. There is a saying on the purpose discipline, which is purpose first. People confused because when they say what's the purpose, the mind takes them what the end goal.
Mm-hmm.
What is the purpose of it? And then they think that purpose has to do with what is the objective. And one of the things that created great confusion is confusing purpose with objective and goal. Purpose comes first. Purpose is what moves you to. Once you know what moves you to, you have clarity. Then the clarity comes at the beginning. And that's why people achieve goals sometimes and they feel empty, because they confuse purpose, objective, and success. And the real formula is purpose, objective, and fulfillment. Because when you know with clarity your purpose, which is giving the best of yourself for the benefit of others, you basically diffuse success and replace it with fulfillment, which is always feeling yourself. Then in turbulent times and clear times, you have to work on purpose. And I have a workshop on purpose where I make sure that in 2 hours, everybody in the team gets their own personalized purpose map, and we work on a team purpose assessment. Okay, and it works wonders.
So I always like to end with a signature resolution question because this is the resolution room. So in your own life and work, what does it mean to you to be truly resolved, not just in conflict, but in purpose?
You know, for me, at those moments where I lose fear and I act out of true service to others, it is paradoxical. When we talk about success, success is not bad. Success is bad when it's not aligned with strengths, character strengths. Then when you serve others, you succeed. It's paradoxical because, serving others means giving, not getting. And it works every time. You always get more than what you give. It's a paradox. And then when I have fear, I am hungry for getting everything. And when I am serving, I give and receive infinitely more. Then I remind myself every day of the service mentality.
It's amazing. Well, I've had an amazing time chatting with you. Before I let you go, can you let everyone know where to follow you in your work, your website, socials?
Then everybody should know already what is the first word of my website, which is positive. Then it's positive AB for Alfredo Borodowski, positiveab.com. There you're going to find when my book is going to be released, my workshops, my calendar, a nice video. And for those, who read the notes of your show and know how to spell my last name, reading them, then I am a fan of LinkedIn. And then you send me hey, let's connect. I was listening to you at Nashe's show. Let's talk. I love it.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Alfredo.
Thank you.
What I hope you take from today's conversation is that rebuilding culture isn't about slogans or quick fixes. It's about honesty, purpose, and the courage to begin again when the mission feels too heavy. Alfredo reminded us that leadership isn't just about solving problems. It's about setting a tone that invites trust, even when the path forward is unclear. And that clarity doesn't come from perfection. It comes from being willing to pause, reset, and realign with what matters most. If this conversation interests you and you're ready to turn chaos into clarity inside your own team, check the show notes for resources to get started. Because resolution isn't just the absence of conflict, it's the presence of purpose. And when leaders step into that space, cultures change. Thank you for joining me in the Resolution Room. If today's conversation gave you something to think about, please consider sharing it with someone else who might need to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show. It really helps more people find these conversations. You can explore our wearable wisdom collection at the Mind Shop or visit lowinsights.com to learn more about our work and upcoming projects. All of the details are in the show notes below. And until next time, keep building in the quiet because that's what will carry you forward.